Because what happens is that it says I'm live here on my phone, but I'm also looking at the monitor, and I'm not there yet. And yet it seems that later on, after the video is done processing, it is starting it from the beginning, a few seconds after I start broadcasting on my phone, right from the mobile phone. So at some point I'll get it right. But I'm still waiting. In the meantime, a few people are here already, thank God. And I'm very happy about that. Okay. Oh, here we are. I'm live. Yes. It's the Nazarite, bringing you Hebrew lore from days of yore. So it's Thursday. We're nearing the end of the week. Robert Harrison says, congratulations on 402 subscribers. Get swifty. Yes, indeed. Take off your pants and your panties. So yes, I passed 400 subs, which is nice. I appreciate every single sub that I get, every like that I get, every comment, and every chat message, and everyone who drops by, whether it's for a few seconds, who the hell is this guy, and they move on, or whether it's for somebody who stays for hours and hours, like you good people. So hello BMXers, hello Robert, hello two other people presumably who are here. Make yourselves known, join the discussion. And speaking of joining the discussion, so okay, I'll start with a question I got today in Reddit, which is, someone asked, in modern day Judaism, most rabbis say we're not supposed to become Nazarites these days. So I'm wondering what you think of that. And I answered, while it's true that vows and oaths are generally discouraged nowadays, and to some degree, always and forever, kind of discouraged. In other words, it's always take it with caution. Do it if you need to, right? A vow or an oath, depending on the situation, but you shouldn't be very loose and liberal and free with taking oaths and vows. So I told him, I don't think it's most rabbis who would say we're not supposed to become Nazarites, per se. I'd wager, I told him, most rabbis would say that as long as it's somebody who's doing it and following halacha, then he or she should go for it. The Nazariteship has always been a part of the Hebrew people, and it is definitely making a comeback. That's what I told him, and it's what I do think is happening. The fact that I've already met a few Nazarites right here in Jerusalem, Orthodox ones, right? Orthodox rabbis who took the Nazarite vow, that's already, I think that speaks volumes. Have I met hundreds of them? No, a handful. But a handful is still better than zero. And there are people who follow this individual's way of thinking who say, not only is it discouraged, but he said, the way he phrased it, right? We're not supposed to become Nazarites these days, which is not true at all. I mean, there is an opinion in halacha that says that without a temple, you shouldn't do it. However, since we do have the Samson Nazarite vow, which does not require to bring offerings, where there is no way of being defiled by human death, by a corpse, and so no sacrifices that need to be made, and no vow to start over, because you don't count when you're doing the Samson vow. It's from you take it until the grave, right? From the moment you take it until you die, you're under the Nazarite vow, the Samson Nazarite vow, and as such, the laws of the Numbers 6 vow, only part of them apply, and not all of them. So, the best way to take a vow nowadays without the temple, I believe, is the Samson vow. It allows you to be a Nazarite for life and still avoid the impurity of being defiled by death, because that wouldn't be breaking your vow. And such a vow is one that really, really is really tailored for a time like now, where we don't have a Sanhedrin, and we don't have a temple, and we don't have the ashes of a red heifer. We don't have pure priests, like ritually pure priests. Incidentally, the author, Rabbi Yehoshua Friedman, who wrote the Nazir Elohim, the book, he says that those who will be purifying the rest of us in time are Nazarite priests. And that's a wonderful way to look at it. And I shared that idea with somebody the other day when I was on my way to a wedding, the wedding that I spoke of yesterday. And he had not thought of that. And before I read that in that book, I had not thought of it either. But it makes perfect sense, actually, that it is Nazarite priests who would be made ritually pure by virtue of their vow. And as long as they don't come into contact with a dead human body, their vow and their purity, ritual cleanliness remains. And they will have the power, the authority, the ability, the capacity to do many things that, well, others before them could not. And it makes perfect sense that it's Nazarite priests who will be involved in bringing ritual purity back to all of Israel. Now, it could come in different ways as well. It doesn't have to be Nazarite priests, but when it comes to, let's say, construction of certain places, certain areas of the temple, the holiest of holies, things of that nature, it really does make sense that it would be Nazarite priests, and it's a wonderful hypothesis, very, very much in keeping with what the Nazariteship is about, and I love that about it. So I told him, right, that as long most Orthodox rabbis may be against vows and oaths. This is true, but it's not don't do it. It's if you're going to do it, you need to go all in because we have no temple. You need to be very careful, very cautious, and it needs to be for life. Now, there are halachic loopholes when it comes to vows. And so there is an out for those who want to do it. There is an out. But the Samson vow specifically is the most attainable nowadays. It's the most viable one. And it's one where initially it's supposed to remain unbroken, which is how I would go for it from the onset. And that's what I wanted, and that's what I'm doing. And God willing, I will be under this vow till the grave. Now, let's see something in the chat. Yes, hello, yes, hi. Where do you think the Ark of the Covenant is located right now? So as we know, it's a great controversy, a great difference of opinion in the world. Some say it's in Ethiopia, some say it's in the Vatican, some say it's in Egypt, some say it's buried under Jerusalem, and some say it's in India or somewhere around East Asia, Southeast Asia. I might be mistaken about that one. The actual literal golden Ark of the Covenant, because we need to remember, the second temple did not have an ark. The second temple did not have an Ark of the Covenant. There was only one constructed. Other things were made again. But the Ark of the Covenant that was made by Bezalel, there were two arks. Two. One was golden, one was wooden. The golden one was made by Bezalel of the tribe of Judah. Right, the son of Uri, the son of Hur of Judah. The wooden one was created by Moses when he received the second stone tablets, which he fashioned, and the divine revelation, right, of writing appeared on them. So there are two arks, one which would remain in the holiest of holies, tabernacle, temple, what have you, and one that would go out with them to wars. So there are two arks. The golden Ark of the Covenant, as far as I'm concerned, is probably buried under Jerusalem, though I wouldn't, I wouldn't presume to know. It just makes some sense to me that it would be buried under Jerusalem, where I am right now. Not necessarily where I'm sitting, but in my fair city here. It's interesting to note that the second temple had no ark. The high priest on the high holiday of atonement, Yom Kippur, he would burn incense on the covering, the kaporet, of the Ark of the Covenant, where the cherubs were, right? The two figures with their wings. And so the second temple, when there was no Ark of the Covenant, there was they say a kind of bump in the earth, a stone called the stone of foundation, and they said it's from the days of the first prophets, and so traditionally that's where from whence the earth was formed, if you will, conceptually, spiritually speaking. There's something very holy and very special, very set apart about that area of the holiest of holies. That's why it was chosen to be the holiest of holies once the temple was erected. Sorry for the coughing. And so the high priest would put the incense on that foundation stone instead of the Ark of the Covenant. So yes, says Ethiopia would be my choice. Yeah, that would also make some sense. I agree. Peace and Coffee. Hello, Peace and Coffee. He says, I heard from Orthodox Jewish sources, we won't need an ark in days of Melech HaMashiach. Well, Orthodox rabbis maintain that we won't need any Torah and commandments. We will only be left with the book of Esther. That's the only thing that will remain. That's the only book of the... Well, no, it's not completely true that we'll need no Torah. The 5 books of Moses will be, but the prophets and the writings, they will be void. They will be canceled out, if you will. And only the book of Esther, only the scroll of Esther will remain. And so not to need an ark, again, I am of the opinion that eventually, ultimately, we won't need any of the artifacts, and we won't need a building, and we won't need any temples. We will be the temple. We are, right? There's the Bob Marley song, Selassie is the chapel. Now, I don't believe in the divinity of Haile Selassie, but I do believe that he, as a ruler and a monarch and an emperor, did have divinity in him, right? The image of God, but unique for a king and an emperor. And in that sense, Selassie is the chapel, I am the chapel, you are the chapel. We're all the temple, right? The image of God. But there was a time when it was needed, and some maintain very, very much so that it is still needed. So what I'm thinking is that, I've said this before, even if we do end up with a third temple, it would eventually, if not from the onset, be vegan. And second of all, eventually, afterwards, we won't need it. And we would be rediscovering our divinity like in fullness. And the building, the artifacts, the Ark of the Covenant itself, right? The gold and the silver and the copper and the wood and the oil and the water and the wine and the animal sacrifices and the plant-based sacrifices. It would all basically be done with and dispensed with, because we won't need it. The divine revelations, which those rituals, the ritual worship, the divine revelations which it is meant to bring into the world, will be coming in through us, and so we will have no need for that temple. So it's not that we won't need an ark, we won't need a temple, let alone an ark. The Torah, right, that's the stone tablets, will be, in us, so to speak. They won't need to be kept away in the holiest of holies, right? We will be the ark, we will be the stone tablets, we will be the temple. It will be written on our heart, in our minds, in our speech, and so on and so forth. Exodus 24, 9-11. I'm going to check out that right here, the JPS version. The JPS Tanakh, Exodus 24. Exodus 24, 9-11. Let's read. Then went up Moses and Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. And they saw the God of Israel. And there was under his feet the like of a paved work of sapphire stone, and the like of the very heaven for clearness. And upon the nobles of the children of Israel he laid not his hand, and they beheld God, and did eat and drink. Right? So I'm remembering it as I'm reading it. It's going. It's in Hebrew. In Hebrew, it doesn't. Well, okay, yes. All right. Let's open it up for discussion. And while you open it up for discussion, raise a question. Oh wait, I'm sorry. And then he says Revelation 11:9 in the New Testament says it's in the New Jerusalem, referring to the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, but what is it that you want to open up specifically for discussion, Robert, regarding the verses from Exodus 24, 9-11? While you do that, I must mention Sneezer. Hello, good to see you. I must mention Sneezer, who once again, for the third time, if I'm not mistaken, provided a real detailed comment referencing the video, right, going through the video complete with timestamps. I haven't yet addressed his previous 2 comments where he did that in detail, addressing the things that were said and spoken, timestamps included, and I apologize. I would want to do it whether in a live stream or a text. I have not forgotten. It's a very great thing that you're doing in the sense of that it has some magnitude, right? You're really going into it and you're clearing up how you would think about it and what it is that it's lovely to read. And I have read them, but I haven't yet responded. Though it's on my list. Speaking of my list, let's go there. Okay. A question from Learn Edit for Me. He said, "What are your thoughts on Karaite Judaism?" Or Rabbi Aaron Reuven. I'm assuming he meant Yaron Reuven, but I'm not sure, so I'll skip that question until he clarifies. "They are revealed a lot to me, how I saw it as a teen, and when I began studying without a pastor gaslighting me." That's what he said. Now, I'm not precisely sure what he means by that they were revealed to him as a teen and when he began studying without a pastor gaslighting me, because I have never studied under a pastor of any kind. But if we're talking about somebody who's a spiritual leader or a guide, or would-be spiritual leader or guide, then there is a lot of merit to having a master and a guide, but there are times when you need to branch out and do your own thing. So if he meant that, or rather, when I began studying without a pastor gaslighting me. So to gaslight is very famously to cause you to doubt that which you are, right? To make you think that you're kind of off your rocker and a little bit crazy. Perhaps not psychotic or clinically insane, but that to gaslight someone is basically to try and make them doubt their own view of reality as they see it. And we're not talking about subjectivity here. We're talking about somebody who is deliberately trying to sow seeds of doubt and uncertainty inside of a person for, well, maybe it's accidental or maybe it's malevolent. When people gaslight, sometimes they're not even aware that that's what they're doing. I've done it in the past, and I was called out on it by my woman. Sometimes I disagree with her, but sometimes she has a point. So since I'm not sure precisely what he means by that, I'm gonna not answer that one either right now. But thoughts on Karaite Judaism? Just a couple of seconds on that. It is a legitimate sect of Judaism. I completely understand, right? Karaites who follow the 5 books of Moses, but do not take the oral rabbinic traditions as law. They have their own customs. They have their own things in keeping with the written Torah and not the oral Torah, and they do have their own oral traditions, if I'm not mistaken, but they don't consider it binding, like halacha, rabbinic law. They don't consider it binding the way that Orthodox people do. Now, they are Hebrews, they are Jews, they can marry other Jews without any problem. There are many of them here in Israel, a minority, but there are still many of them. And what I love about Karaites, their devotion to the 5 books of Moses is commendable. Second of all, even though they have the 5 books of Moses as source text, they know their Nach meaning Nevi'im Ktuvim, the prophets and the writings. A lot of people who are in the Orthodox world, what's a lot? I'm not going to say a lot. Many people in the Orthodox world busy themselves with the study of Mishnah, with the study of Talmud, with the oral traditions. And some of them pay less mind to the texts that were canonized before that, in the sense of the prophets and the writings. And I think that they do that at their own peril. It's not that halacha is not something you ought to devote time to. Obviously you should. If you want to follow halacha, you need to know halacha, because how can you follow something if you don't know it? And knowing how halacha came about, and studying the Mishnah, and studying the Talmud, the Babylonian and Jerusalem Talmuds, that gives you great insight into the various debates that went on, and into the way that halacha was formed, which is major, because halacha is still being formed nowadays based on all those teachings, because since the High Court, the Sanhedrin, was disbanded, and it collapsed, then we need to work off of those more ancient laws and rules and regulations put forth by our sages. So, Karaite Judaism is a legitimate branch of the Hebrew faith. They, like I said, I commend them for being so into the Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Ktuvim, right? The 5 books of Moses, the prophets, the writings. And And I think that there's a lot of merit to the way that they do things. Now, I am not a Karaite Jew, so I don't know everything about them. I've never lived that life, but I do attribute a lot of significance to the five books of Moses. I consider it a separate thing entirely. Those were canonized from the beginning, whereas the prophets and the writings, you were not commanded to write them down. Certain books in scrolls, certain prophets were commanded to write down. But our sages and the ones who made the canon that we know as the Hebrew Bible, only the five books of Moses, only those five first books, only about them was it said, keep this, canonize this, write it down, a scroll for each tribe, a scroll in the temple or tabernacle, a scroll or two for the king of Israel. This needs to remain. But what came later with the prophets, the major and minor ones, the later and earlier ones, and the writings, right, the scrolls like Proverbs and Esther and Ecclesiastes and Lamentation, Ruth, Psalms, and so on, I find that, at least in some ways, the Karaites are really on top, and I'm generalizing, of course. The Karaites are really on top of those of the Hebrew Bible at large, because they consider that to be more source text than the oral traditions in the rabbinic law, like Mishnah and Talmud and so on. So those are my 2 cents on that. Now, as for the other questions he had, I'll have to get more information. I responded to that comment, and hopefully he will get back to me. Although BMXers pointed out that YouTube took away his comments, but they do appear on my Creator Studio on the back end. So I don't exactly know what's going on. Speaking of Robert, he sent me a DM the other day of a Jew and a Messianic Jew having a dialogue in New York City. It was lovely. I agreed with a lot of what both of them were saying, not regarding Yeshua's divinity or kingship, but just that he was basically a Jew, right? Born and raised and died a Jew. And I think that because of Christianity and because of Messianic Judaism and all the animosity and the problematic areas, a lot of people perhaps don't consider the fact that, right, they call him Yeshu. Yeshu being an acronym for Yimach Shemo V'Zichro, may his name and memory be eradicated or erased. But once again, I don't consider that to be the case. And even if you go with the opinion in the Talmud that says that he worshipped idols towards the end of his life and he left the path and he became like a rebel and became an idol worshiper, first, it's not at all clear that it's the same Yeshua that they're talking about there, or Yeshu. And second of all, it could have been a response to the growing Christian influence on the Jews at the time, after the destruction of the Second Temple. And that, of course, would bring about a lot of resistance. And I wouldn't fault the sages for wanting to keep people away from Christianity by saying that its founder, let's say, even though others founded it, others founded it. Yeshua was just a Hebrew man, right? But I digress. So yeah, I enjoyed that video that Robert sent. Okay, let's see. Let's continue here with the chat right here. Okay. So Robert, you wanted to open it up for discussion. Hopefully I'll be able to get to it now. Is Baruch considered as sage in Judaism? I don't know who Baruch is. Which Baruch are you talking about, Mr. Yes? Shalom everyone, said Sneezer. Hello, Sneezer. I hope you're doing well with all the sneezing. BMXers says, yes, why do you say it might be in Ethiopia? Well, I'm going to answer for him on my end, because he has his own opinion, I'm sure. I feel it might be in Ethiopia because Hebrews went into exile there. And it could very well be that it ended up in Africa, in Kush, partly because one of the rivers, right, of Eden, flows there, if I'm not mistaken, or next to there. And I think that it would be an interesting place, let's say, right, to put it there in Africa as opposed to the Middle East. But again, I think it's buried under Jerusalem. Sneezer says, I heard it was recently moved from Ethiopia, from Brian Forrester, I think it was. May have been Graham Hancock. Now, these two individuals, Graham Hancock and Brian Forrester, I think Graham Hancock, right, still alive and kicking. I think Brian Forrester died a few years ago. If I'm thinking of the wrong dude. I think Brian Forrester was the guy who claimed to, you know what, I don't recall, and I don't want to misspeak and go blah, 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 but then, oh, it wasn't even the guy I was talking about. So I'm not going to talk about that. But, okay, recently moved from Ethiopia. Now, there is a specific church in Ethiopia, if I'm not mistaken, a Christian, Ethiopian Orthodox church, and they have guards there that are called the guards of the Ark of the Covenant, and they claim that in their church is the Ark of the Covenant hidden. And the guards, they go blind, young, if I'm not mistaken. Some of them die, some of them go blind. I don't recall. Look it up. Now, it says in the Talmud that the Ark of the Covenant would slay many of the tribe of Levi because of mishandling it. And right, ha'aron haya mechale bahem, it would be consuming them. That's also why the tribe of Levi was a minority. And you can see this happening when David first wants to bring the Ark of Adonai to the city of David. And Uzzah and, who was it, his brother, who were driving the coach, the carriage that was leading the Ark of the Covenant, and the ox, or the animals that were carrying it, they suddenly stumbled, and the Ark was about to fall. And Uzzah grabbed it. He grabbed the covenant, and he died. And the place was renamed Peretz Uzzah, the outburst of Uzzah, because he held on to the Ark of the Covenant, and he died right then and there. We all know the famous Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark scene at the end. Great cinematography there, huh? Great effects. A very moving scene. And the Ark has been said to cause people to die because of mishandling and mistreatment, to go blind because of the light coming out of it. And even if it's not physical light like sunlight, there's a kind of divine light, if you will, that's perhaps on a different spectrum, or simply not visible to us, like, right, light breaks down, light has a spectrum, we can see some of it, we can't see most of it, if I'm not mistaken, most of it we can't see, from ultraviolet to infrared, a lot of that scale, that's a lot of it we can't see. So it makes some sense to me that if indeed the Ark of the Covenant of the Hebrew God is located in that church in Ethiopia, that those who are the guards of the covenant, of the Ark of the Covenant, would be going blind, dying young. It's one of those. BMXers says, I think that the New Testament teaching in the book of Revelation is that it's in heaven. Well, that begs the question, what do you mean by heaven, and what do you mean that it's there? Because it was a physical golden ark, wooden ark covered in gold with a golden cover. And the other ark, which Moses constructed, was plain wood. So these were actual artifacts, if you choose to see them. They had obviously a lot of esoteric meaning, significance, symbolism, and so on, but they were also physical objects, right? That had a width and a length and a height that existed in some place and time. So when you say it's in heaven, I wonder what you mean. So, or I wonder what the followers of Yeshua think that it means in the New Testament. Yes continues and says, because of Sephora's origins and beliefs, even before her tribe met Moses, they worshipped a form similar to Yah. So Sipporah was a Midianite. Her father Yitro, was a high priest of Midian. And they say, in the external teachings, based on what Yitro hears after the exodus from Egypt, when he comes to meet Moses, before the Ten Commandments are given. And they say that Yitro he was a truth seeker. He worshipped a lot of idols and a lot of false gods in a lot of false ways, but not simply to anger the one true God, not to anger the Creator. He wanted to find out what is the proper way, what is the true way, what is the path I should follow. And so he experimented with the gods of this and the gods of that, eventually landing ultimately on the Hebrew God that we know. That's how it's laid down in the Torah. And so they worshipped a form similar to Yah. That makes sense because it must have been kind of a lower god, a lower form, but a form resembling the Hebrew God nonetheless. Sneezer says, also often is said clouds, and I wonder if it wasn't meaning online. Also often is said clouds. Oh, I'm sorry. BMXers, Sneezer says to BMXers, in the Old Testament, it's said in the sky. Heaven is a short leap. Also often it says clouds, and I wonder if it wasn't meaning online. I'm not sure what that means. Oh, clouds, you mean literally now, referencing something that's going on now that we would call a cloud. So, he says it's in heaven, it's in the sky. Well, look, it says it right there in the Torah. The Torah is not in the heaven. The Torah is not across the sea. The Torah is not somewhere unknowable. The Torah is here in our hearts, in our minds, in our speech, to follow and fulfill. This was stressed very, very much. It was not given to angels who have no free will. It wasn't given to other sort of divine beings or messengers. It was given to us, human beings, flesh and blood and bone, weakness and frailty, catastrophe, and everything that includes. It was given to us to better ourselves and to become that image of God. So, clouds, well, yes, the cloud of the revelation, the clouds of glory on Enei HaKavod, they would be surrounding it, and they would be surrounding the camp. So it was that revelation in cloud and in fire, and pillar of cloud, pillar of fire, they were there. Now, as for where it went or where it is, right, there's always a higher and lower. And the physical golden Ark of the Covenant and the physical wooden Ark of the Covenant, these are, again, the sort of last stop, right, in a progression, in a chain, in a hierarchy of physical to spiritual and vice versa. So if something physical exists, it has a spiritual root. So you could argue over the spiritual root and the spiritual nature, if you will, of the Ark of the Covenant. But we're talking about something that was an actual object. So when you say it was in the sky or in a cloud or online, tell me what you mean, because I'm interested. Robert Harrison says, I believe they say God and did not get hurt. I'm trying to understand who said God and did not get hurt. Who was it? I'm not sure what you're talking about right now. Please clarify. Sneezer says, as long as you enjoy the comments, I will keep leaving them. Yeah, I am enjoying the comments. I want others, people, check out, the last few videos. You don't even have to watch the videos. If you don't want, you can just check out Sneezer's comments and the timestamps. You don't need to watch the whole thing. You can reference his comment and take a look at what he was talking about if you're interested. And he obviously, as a follower of Yeshua, has ideas that differ from mine. But that's the way it's supposed to be. Sneezer says, Robert says, what do you and the chat believe? Thanks, Achi. I believe they say God and did not get hurt. What do you mean? You mean saw God? Okay, so you're talking about the verses over there. Okay. Now I understand. So we're talking about Exodus 24, verses 9 through 11. Vayir'u et Elohei Yisrael. So, here's the thing. God's revelation as Elohei Yisrael refers to the Elohim and Yisrael. And that's a revelation which is perceivable, and they, it said that they were not hurt, yes. The certain revelation that they would have, the certain revelation that they witnessed there is one where they probably should not have been eating and drinking right then and there. However, Rashi and other commentators say that because God did not want to mix joy with sorrow, if you will, it was sort of allowed so that they would sit and eat and drink with God's glory, and that's a particular kind of revelation, in plain view. And it says under his feet, right? ותחת רגליו כמעשה לבנת הספיר וכעצם השמיים לטוהר. Right, which again, I'll read it in English, the JPS Tanakh, and there under his feet, the like of a paved work of sapphire stone, and the like of the very heaven for clearness. This idea of under his feet, right? Anytime it mentions anything to do with God's feet, God's eyes, God's arms, hands, fingers, it's all revelations. It's not that God has a body. There's absolutely no such thing in the Hebrew faith, no such thing in the Torah. Big, big no-no. Whenever we talk of anything that's what would it be? Anthropomorphizing, whatever, however you say it, attributing human qualities or features to the Most High, it's simply that the Torah spoke in the tongue of men, so we would understand it. We are human, we have eyes, we dig it. We have arms, we dig it. We have fingers, we dig it. We have feet under our feet, meaning our feet are the lowest possible, right? They're the lowest area of our physical being. And under under Elohim's feet, if you will, is a certain divine revelation. That's what they were witnessing. When God says, Lo yir'ani ha'adam v'chai, when Moses says, show me your glory, and he says, you cannot see my face, Lo tuchal lirot et panai, no man shall see me and live, Ki lo yir'ani ha'adam v'chai. And he says, I will, however, show you something from the back. I may have something in the back. That's what he told Moses. Now, Moses was a unique individual, and he was not like Nadav and Avihu. He was not like Aaron, and he was not like the 70 sages and prophets who were there. He was his own thing. But through him, they were able to achieve this great revelation, which is under God's feet, something close to the ground. We are on the ground. So it was something that was permissible for humans to witness. And the commentators say that when it says that, I'll read it again straight from the, right? And upon the nobles of the children of Israel, he laid not his hand, meaning that it ought to have been that God laid his hand on them because they were beholding God, as it continues and says, and eating and drinking. And one would say, no, if you're beholding God, you don't busy yourself with food and drink. You take that in, you set that aside, and you maybe eat and drink afterwards. On the other hand, we know that there are some right, there are sacrifices that were eaten, and we are commanded to eat great food on the Sabbath. And so you can look at it in a couple of different ways. But that, so you think they saw God. Now, it's a revelation of God and not God himself, herself, themselves. Saw, right. BMXers says Tzipora, however it's spelt, was a Midianite, and I think it just says her father was a priest of some sort. Right, that's basically what I was saying too. Carl, hello Carl. You were here before already. Welcome back. Carl Strabel, my opinion, it's religion, Jews, it's true. Okay. Well, I hope I'm understanding you correctly. I mean, it calls into question of what is true. Right? Nowadays, there is a subjective truth and objective truth, if you will, and people like to use the phrase, my truth. I find that to be a little problematic, right? 2 and 2 equals 4, because we've all agreed that 2 and 2 equals 4. To paraphrase, right, in 1984, when O'Brien tells him, no, 2 and 2 equals 4 only because the party said so. If the party said 2 and 2 equals 5, everybody would believe that. Truth, he says, comes from power, and it's simply the manifestation of power. And if the party wanted it so, then it would be so. The only reason why 2 and 2 is not 5 is because the party at this time does not wish for it to become 5. Now, that's a very daunting and difficult line of thought. But I think that if we're simply looking at it traditionally throughout the course of history, we see that things that were written down in the Torah thousands of years ago have come to pass. We see that things that were written down in the Torah came to be. Pretty precise, too. And so even if you maintain that it's a bunch of hogwash written by dumbasses for idiots, and that none of it ever happened, you need to at least concede that these are very ancient stories, and so they might have some merit, and that certain things, even if you don't look at it as a history book or prophecy or a book that tells the future, a lot of things that were written there did come to be, in the sense of Israel being kicked out, the temple being destroyed. When I say a temple, I mean the place, the place of worship, and a lot of other things. So there is some, and there's a reason why the Bible is considered to be the cornerstone text of the, well, let's say the Western society, or a large part of Western society, because people attribute a kind of truth to it. And you can argue over whether it's absolute, objective, subjective, and many people do. So if you're saying it's true, I'm going to go with that. It is true. It's true for me as well. It doesn't mean it had to all happen that way. It means that when I look at my life, and when I look at history, and then I look at the Bible, specifically the 5 books of Moses and the Torah, and the Jewish religion, a lot of it sort of is self-evident in a way. But I'm biased. I might be looking at it through Jew-colored glasses, if you will. Radar Shadow, hello, hi, that sounds familiar, he says. Okay. So again, I don't know what he's referencing. Yes, says, we don't know if Moses remembered of Yah during being Egyptian royalty. Midianite's deity's name was respected by Hebrews as similar form of Yah. They hailed from son of Canaan, explorer of Somalia, Ethiopia, Cush, a name similar to Kos, a third of the Ban Egyptian trinity, who also went underworld and resurrected another special important deity. Oh, wait, I lost my spot here. Another special important deity. Oh, come on, where were we? Oh, I saw someone new. Manishma. Hi, Chicken Chick. Manishma. But wait, but I'm not quite there yet. Okay, here I am. Sorry about that. So, yes, said a few things, but not in succession, so I'm looking for it in the chat here. So he says similar to QOS, Kos, a third of the Ban Egyptian trinity, also went underworld and resurrected. Another special important deity is Jerich or Yerich, who opposed marriage of Baal daughters, and undrunk father, Jerich, and Kus is Jericho. Okay, I'm not exactly sure where you're at there. Look, when you say I'll speak to what I know. So I don't know much about the Egyptian pantheon or the Midianite pantheon of deities, but if Moses remembered of Yah, yes, and we know this. We know this because I think that the revelation of the burning bush, would not have been revealed to Moses had he not been working on himself and getting close to the Most High through conventional Hebrew methods, if you will, throughout his entire prior 80 years. Now, he grew up some years in his actual home in Egypt as the son of Yocheved and Amram, of Levi, of the tribe of Levi. Only afterwards, when he was weaned and when he was older, only afterwards was Moses transferred to the palace, or one of the palaces in Egypt, growing up as the Prince of Egypt, if you will, right? Along with Ramses, who later reigned. If I'm not mistaken, that's what the Torah says. It doesn't mention Ramses by name, but presumably he would have grown up with the next pharaoh, and as the son of the daughter of Pharaoh. But he did know of his heritage. At least it alludes to it, if you will, in the Torah, and it confirms it, if you can confirm it, in Midrash, in the external teachings. Right? He did know that the Israelites in bondage were his brothers. Okay. BMXer says, is that what it was about? Ironic that he commented on my comment for some reason. Yes, he did. Sneezer says to BMXers, in the Old Testament, somewhere it says Israel is in the sky or clouds, somewhere, not sure where. That Israel is in the sky? That Israel is in the clouds? I'm not sure what you mean, but if you have the verse, chapter and verse, do share it here. 40,000 Karaites in Israel, to be exact, according to statistics. Right, which is not a majority, but it's not a small number either. Robert says, you believe in the Tanakh as Kodesh. Yes, right? Kodesh meaning sacred. But I do differentiate. There's a sacredness that's the 5 books of Moses. There's a sacredness that's the spirit of prophecy. And there's the sacredness of what's called Ruach HaKodesh, or the sacred spirit. And those are different forms of prophecy. There's a difference between the prophecy of Moses and all other prophets. And there's a difference between spirit of prophecy and Ruach HaKodesh, the spirit of sacredness. So these were different revelations which inspired these books, and they were written under different circumstances, in different ways, right? Channeling different revelations. So while you can say that the Tanakh itself is all Kodesh, holy, sacred, set apart, yes, but it's nuanced. Much like there's a difference between the sacredness of the everyday, there's the difference, right, between the sacredness of the Sabbath and the different festivals. They each aim to bring a certain divine revelation into creation through humankind, through the children of Israel. And so, even though you can have sacredness and holiness in your everyday life, the Sabbath, the festivals, the high holidays, these are all meant specifically, and some of them correspond with agricultural things going on here in the physical earth, in order to bring certain divine revelations into being and to bring certain unities and connections to fruition in order to generate new things, this time from the bottom up, not just from top to bottom. BMXers continues and says, the oldest synagogue in Israel is a Karaite synagogue, and Karaites were one of the first Zionists. That's very interesting. I don't think I knew that the oldest one is a Karaite one. It certainly makes sense. They're a very ancient sect. Sneezer says to BMXers, I may be wrong. Can't seem to find any reference from Googling. Nothing comes into my mind either with Israel being in the sky. So I don't know about that. Yes says, so I read that bit. So since I don't know much about the Midianite pantheon of deities or the Egyptian pantheon of deities, I can't really speak to it. But if you know more, please share with us. I'm interested. BMXer says to Sneezer, can't remember reading it, but haven't read it in a long time. And Sneezer says to him, I remember reading it many times, though only for certain in the New Testament. Right. I would think that since I don't know the New Testament too well at all, I would only be referencing the Old Testament, and I don't remember it there either. Radar Shadow says, Jews await the Messiah. Christians believe it'll be his second visit. Muslims even await him as part of the Mahdi. Hold on a second. The Mahdi, the guided from Wikipedia, is a prominent figure in Islam who is believed to appear at the end of time to rid the world of evil and injustice. Well, that's a very much of a messianic thing, let's put it that way. of the final Messiah. What is all the fighting about, says Radar Shadow. We're fighting, really? Or are you talking about what's going on here about the war? BMXer says, haven't read any scriptures, canons of any sort in a long time. Now, BMXers, I wonder why. Is it because you've made a conscious decision not to busy yourself at this time with the texts? Is it that you don't have the time? Is it that you would like to, but there's something hindering you? Because I'd love to know the reason. Or you don't have to share, obviously. Sneezer says, both alive, I think. May be wrong. I mix the two up frequently. The MXer says to Radar, because I don't know what Sneezer is referencing there, and Rastas believe he already came a second time in the avatar of Haile Selassie, Rastafari, Makonnen. Right. Yes, they do. They believe he was the second coming, although he never denied his divinity and he never acknowledged his divinity. When the Rastafari came to meet, when a delegation of Rastas came to meet Haile Selassie, right, so he was crowned Emperor of Ethiopia in 1930. Soon afterwards, at some point soon afterwards, a delegation of Rastafarians who saw him as God incarnate and the second coming of Yeshua, of their Jesus, they came to him. And he didn't come out and say, yes, I am God, bow down. Nor did he say, I'm not God. He said, whatever you're doing, I'm paraphrasing, whatever you're doing, keep on doing it. It's a good thing. Something along those lines. Sneezer says, yep, sounds like you've heard the same as me regarding the ark in Ethiopia. Yes, I guess I have. Follower of Jeremiah says yes. I'm not sure what you're referring to there. Radar Shadow says, interesting to VMX. Robert asks, is the tribe of Shimon considered southern tribe? By southern, do you mean the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom? Right? Because are you talking about the kingdoms or the tribe? Are you talking about the geographical location where they settled? Are you talking about the plots of land that were allotted to them in the book of Joshua? You'll have to be more specific there. Sneezer says, I think the ark, or more specifically covenant, being lost, is highly suggestive that it was also replaced. Well, that would be a very Christian way of looking at things, for sure. Hellish Maland or Mayand, hi, hello. You're a recent sub, if I'm not mistaken. Welcome aboard. Maybe it's because they are very old priests. No, I don't think so. If you look at the documentary that was made, or a short interview with one of those guards, he's a pretty young guy. They're not very old priests. But again, I don't remember if they are dying young or going blind, or both. But one of those is said about that church and those who are the guards of the ark. BMXers with dreadlocks says, avatar might be the wrong word. Rastas might also not agree. Well, an avatar is what? Like an incarnation of deity? Or like a form, a physical form of some kind? Sneezer says to Robert, I call it the center of time, and it's the main feature of my book. Been there. Oh, pardon me. It's also known as the Akashic Records. Sneezer says it is a point from which you can watch all of eternity. As for getting there, I'm no expert. I was taken there. Revelation 11:19 says Robert Harrison, the golden ark in heaven. Could you read Revelation to have a better knowledge? Well, okay. Since I don't consider it to be something I would have any faith in. I mean Hebrew Nazarite. HN, okay. BMXers with dreadlocks says, HN, the book of Revelation merely says the writer saw the heaven open, and he saw the Ark of the Covenant, if I remember correctly. Right, so it was a vision. It wasn't literally an ark in the that's why I'm saying. Okay, so what you're saying is that in the book of Revelation, in the Christian Bible, it says that the heaven open. Now, heaven open is what Ezekiel says, right? Niftechu hashamayim vayireh marot Elohim. The heavens open, and I saw godly sights. Okay. That he saw the ark in heaven. In a vision, of course. Right, a vision, which means that it wasn't physically there. So that's how I would see it as well. Robert says, does anybody know what is in the ark? Well, it contains the tablets, and there's a machloket, a difference of opinion, over whether it contains only the two formed complete whole tablets, or does it contain the tablets and the remnants of the tablets that were broken. Some say that it's only those two, and the remnants were kept in the holiest of holy, but not in the ark. And some say, no, it was two complete full tablets, and the two broken tablets who were there as well. Now, when King Solomon brings the ark into the holiest of holies, it says, Ein ba'aron rak shnei luchot. Right? There is not in the ark but two tablets. So it could mean both sets of tablets. It could mean either just the two tablets. But we know that in the holiest of holies we had a few things, right? We had a scroll of Torah, we had an ark, we had the flowering rod of Aaron of the tribe of Levi, and we had a receptacle, right, a container of manna. Those were the things that were in the holiest of holies. Those were the things that traditionally were in the holiest of holies. So, and the anointing oil. The anointing oil, I think, was there as well. I think those are the five or six things that were in the holiest of holies. But as for the ark, it's just the tablets, or the tablets and the breakage of the former tablets. All right, it's been almost an hour. Yes, I'm going to say goodbye. Unfortunately, I would love to keep going, but I'm starting to feel a little lightheaded. And again, I want to give you my all. I want to give you 110%. I want to acknowledge what you're saying and really think it through and give you my best, and not have to deal with anything else but this, because you deserve it. If you make the time to come here and engage and chat and be here with me, then you would deserve nothing but 110% or more of Yonatan. So I will say thank you. Thank you all. We will continue this, God willing, next week. Leave a comment, leave a like if you want. Right, I'm Hebrew Nazarite across the board on different social media platforms. If you want to DM me, if you want to ask anything, let me know something that maybe it's personal and you wouldn't want to do it in the chat. People have done that in the past. So go for it. I wish us all, again, tomorrow is Friday. Maybe I will be able to go live. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll be able to have a short. Maybe I won't. We'll have to wait and see. But if I don't broadcast on Friday or after the Sabbath, or if I don't do any kind of a short or any kind of a video, I will see you, God willing, Sunday night, 10 p.m. Israel time. Save the date. Until then, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your kind and generous attention. I thank you for the wisdom and experience and knowledge that you bring to the table, our little digital table here. You could be doing anything else right now. Anything, basically. But you're here with me, and I appreciate it. I really, really do. Good night from Jerusalem. I'll see you around.